Hello there, I am Bev Thorogood and I am joined by my gorgeous brother Brian, who is going to be teaching me and hopefully teaching you how to take photographs properly, not using your smartphone but using a proper camera. Now I'm not in any way, shape or form a knowledgeable photographer, but my brother is. He's a professional photographer, but he's going to be talking to me like I know nothing, because I don't. So the idea of recording this is so that anybody who wants to follow along, who is also an absolute beginner and an absolute novice just like me, will hopefully learn at the same pace I am. I've looked at quite a few training videos on YouTube and various different places, and some of them have been fantastic. Others, even though they've been talking about being for beginners, have already within a minute of starting gone over my head because I don't even know the basics. So this is really for anybody who is starting with this amazing bit of kit and knows absolutely nothing about it or what to do with it. So Brian, my apologies. I will be asking really stupid questions.
Go for it. Actually, it's the usual sort of adage, there is no such thing as a stupid question. You can only give stupid answers to them. And hopefully I'll try and avoid that. Good to see you, Bev. As Bev says, I'm a brother. The reason we're doing it on this, as much as anything else as well, is because you live in the sort of East Midlands, don't you, down in Lincolnshire, in the UK? Because obviously you might not be in the UK if you're watching this. So it's around about the middle of England. And I live up in the frozen far northwest of England in a place called Cumbria. So we're about 260, 270 miles apart. So normally I would have popped next door and I would have said how to do this. But with these days, it's and that miles between us, it's difficult. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to take somebody through. And as you just said, that the problem with beginner videos for almost anything, they're usually done by experts, which is great. You need that knowledge. But it's usually a case of, well, this is a digital SLR camera or this is a mirrorless camera. So that's the opening gambit. The next sentence usually goes on about f-stops, ASAs, ISOs, whatever it is like that. And you think, well, actually, please just tell me where the on button is.
Yes.
So
which one is the on button?
Which one is the on button? So, I mean, from my point of view, as Bev says, I've been a professional photographer. I specialize in corporate and portrait photography for a commercial site, but also have a love of architecture and buildings, take a lot of historic buildings and churches. And I think one of the things that we're going to be covering this is to try and find out what really excites you to get you into taking those photographs, because that's not what you're particularly after, is it, Bev?
No, I'm after a hobby, if I'm honest. I'm after something that I can get my head around, that gives me a sense of purpose, I guess, because I work a lot. I work for myself. I'm a freelance trainer and coach, so I spend a lot of time on my business, and I have a very active mind. So being able to switch off completely, I find quite hard. I get bored quite quickly. So even if I'm watching something on TV, that's not enough. I have to be doing something, normally playing games or doing something on my smartphone. So I wanted to find a hobby that would keep my brain active, but took me away from my work. So it's something that I can sort of do for me, really. Plus I guess I probably have a few self-limiting beliefs around technology, feeling that I'm not very clever when it comes to technical stuff. So there's an element in me that wants to master this beast here, just to be able to say that I was able to learn how to do it. We can all take photographs with our smartphones. Smartphones are great. I've sort of really got into doing, selfies and social media stuff, but it doesn't feel like I'm really exploring what's possible.
Well, let's take it from that. It's a great starting point, really, isn't it? Because you said that you take photographs on your smartphone. And an awful lot of people who are going to be watching or listening to this are going to say, well, I've got a great phone. It's, however many megapixels, and it's got this many lenses and does this, that, and the other. So what's the point of going for a digital camera is a lot of people's questions. And it's certainly one which I get asked a lot. What's driving you to get away from the smartphone? Because if you've got a perfectly good camera on your smartphone, why do you want to become a digital photographer?
Well, interestingly, and one of the things I didn't sort of say before is that part of being employed, self-employed, is that I spend a huge amount of time sat behind a computer at a desk. So getting out and taking photographs with a proper camera is, for me, it's a purpose to get out and get some fresh air. It's a purpose to get out and be more mindful about what's around me. And whilst I can do that with a smartphone, I have my phone on me pretty much, I hate to say it, 24 hours a day, because it's right next to my bed when I'm asleep. So there's no impetus there for me to use the smartphone to get me out and about. I go with it everywhere anyway. Whereas there's something about, in my head, I'm thinking there's something about taking the camera out and actually going out with a purpose to take
tactile
photographs.
thing, isn't
it? It is, yeah. But there's a purpose to going out that I don't think the smartphone would give me, because it doesn't challenge me. Whereas this is about almost multitasking, I suppose, multitasking in as much as getting the fresh air, getting some exercise, challenging my brain, and hopefully, depending on how good you are, me coming back with some really good photographs at the end of it. And memories, memories of getting out there and doing it.
Well, I will tell you one thing to begin with. On this very, very first episode of what we do, and I am not going to make you a good photographer. I can't do that. Only you can do that. What I can do is I can try and give you some of the pointers to avoid some of the pitfalls, and some of the pointers to actually open your eyes to experiences. Because I don't care what it is. I've got my camera in my hand. I've got at the minute I've got one of my Canon cameras. I've got a few different cameras, obviously. This is great for certain things, but there's, as we said, a tactile thing. There's something about having something solid in your hand where you've got to start concentrating. With a phone, you can just pick and snap. This thing, got to bring it up to your eye. You've got to start looking as to what's happening. You've got to have a think about what you're doing. And I think that's the key thing for me. But at the end of the day, as I say, I can't make you a good photographer. Only you can do that. But what I can do is take away some of that fear factor that you've just said about the technology. I can give you some of the pointers as to how to use that technology. I mean, most of us drive cars or vehicles of some description. Why do we need a car? There's no real need for a car as an object. We use a car to get from one place to another. We use the technology in that to do it efficiently, or we'd use it to do it comfortably, or to do it quickly. But at the end of the day, a car is a piece of metal with four wheels and an engine that gets you from one place to another. A camera for me is a similar sort of thing. I love the technology. I come from an electronics background originally. I'm into technology, and I like working out how things work. But the best camera on the planet is not going to make you a good photographer. And I think that's the important thing. What's going to make you a good photographer is what you look at, what you interpret on there, and probably tell a story as well, because an awful lot of people get caught up in the technology. It's got a mirrorless action, it's got electronic shutter, it's got automatic this and automatic that, but they forget that at the end of the day, a photograph has to convey a message. And some of the best photographs we've seen over the years we don't remember them for the fact that the guy behind it had a Nikon F1 camera or a Canon camera or whatever, or Hasselblad. We remember the fact that, for instance, the famous Earthrise photograph, which was taken on a Hasselblad, a really expensive Hasselblad camera. Who cares? There was a picture as people were going around the moon for the first time in 1968 of watching the Earth rise above the horizon of the moon. And we look back on ourselves. The story is nothing to do with the camera, but the camera facilitated it. So at the end of this, if we can get to that point, then that's what I think we've won on. What I need to be doing is saying, well, you can achieve that in the same way as driving that car analogy. In the UK, we tend to use what the Americans call stick shifts, manual gearboxes more than automatics over here. And in the early days of driving a car, you would put your head down and you would look at the gear stick before you change gear, and then have to look up the road. Once you've got used to it, you don't do that. You've got the muscle memory, know exactly what it's going to do. And that's where mastering a camera gives you the advantage. Once you can get to the point where that is natural, where it's something you don't necessarily think about, but you've got the knowledge in there, then you can take those fantastic photographs. So that's what we're going to try and achieve in this. But let's go back to the beginning, because we said about this. We can get all techie, but have you got your camera there? You have, haven't you?
I have, yes.
What have you got? What sort of camera is it?
So, right, okay, here we go. So this is what I think it is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So this is it's a digital, some would call it digital SLR, but it's not strictly a digital SLR because it's mirrorless. So I don't really understand what that means, other than I think old-fashioned SLR cameras literally had a mechanical shutter. Digital SLR cameras still have a mechanical shutter. This doesn't have a mechanical shutter. It has a screen that is sort of acts instead of the mirror.
Not far off. What is it? It's an Olympus. I can see that.
It's an Olympus EM10 Mark II.
Marvelous, great little camera. Now that's been superseded a couple of times in the Olympus range, and this is the first sort of thing. We don't need the brand new technology, which is going to cost you a fortune to take great photos. That is a great little camera. I could take professional quality photographs on that all day, every day. So it's a fantastic bit of kit.
Can I just say that? So this was my Christmas present, and it's not brand new. It is secondhand, and I will say where it came from, because I thought the company that I bought it from were really, really good, but I can't remember the name, and I know you will because you recommended them.
It was MPB in the UK. MPB do a lot of used camera gear, and I bought some of my stuff from there. We're not affiliated with MPB, by the way, but I've based on that. But I've found them to be absolutely superb, and the quality that they put out is just as they describe. So I'm pleased. Yeah. I'm pleased actually, because I was a bit worried in that I advised you down that route.
No, but what I think, so when I was originally looking to try and get into photography, I wanted a DSLR, a digital SLR camera. So I started looking new, and I wanted to spend just a few £100. It's a hobby that I don't know if I'm going to enjoy. I didn't want to sink a whole load of money into it. So I was looking at DSLRs. I'd never even heard of mirrorless cameras. And the cheapest really that I could find were around about £500 just for the camera body. You may get cheaper, I couldn't see any really, just for the camera body before the lens. So my immediate response was, this is too expensive a hobby for me to get into if I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. And you came back and suggested a mirrorless camera, and from MPB, which has meant that for under, gosh, I'm trying to remember how much it all came to with a lens. I think it was under £300. I'm sure it was under £300 for the camera body, and also for a lens, which we will talk about later. So that made it very affordable for me to get started.
Well, from my point of view, it's good, because if you do recommend something to someone, you do hope it's going to work out well. Why I suggested this, and let's go back a step. I don't want to get too involved in the technology straight away, but we're already into the terminology, and this is where people are possibly recoiling a bit and think, oh, mirrorless and DSLRs, and I can't take these acronyms. So let's simplify that a little bit, put the real language. You've got a mirrorless camera there. I have in my hands my Canon 7D, which is now a very old camera. It's quite a few years old, but solid, it's great. And this is what they call a DSLR, digital single lens reflex camera. And they're both effectively single lens reflex cameras. And what that really means is that it has a single lens, which uses originally a reflex sort of path for the light to go through. So what happens is you look through there, and you're seeing the light which is coming in. You look through there.
Yeah, that's it.
And you're seeing the light which is coming in to the front. If that light goes dark, this will go dark. If the light is bright, it'll go light. If it's out of focus, this will be out of focus. And that's the basic point of it. Some of the other types of camera, we're not going to go through the different types, but you've got twin lens reflex, which use two different lenses, what they call rangefinder cameras. They use two little openings. They're different. We're not going to go down that. We're not going to worry about it too much. The difference on these is inside here is a mirror. And if I was to take the lens off the front of this, you can't see properly into that, but you may just see a little bit of a reflection from a mirror. Inside there is a mirror, which sits at about 45 degrees to the light coming in. And that shines the light upwards into this. And this is called a pentaprism. Pentaprism, because it's a prism which has got 5 sides. Simple as that. And what happens is, because this is a lens, the light comes in, but it's upside down at this point, as it hits what would be the film in the old days, but the sensor now. And we don't want to see it upside down, so the light goes up, it gets turned around in there, so when we see it at the back, it's the right way up. Simple as that. Yours is slightly different. Instead of having a physical flow of the light all the way through, you have a little TV camera in the back. And in there is a little TV screen. So instead of having the prism, you've replaced it with a TV. Simple as that. So you're watching a TV display rather than the real thing.
So what are the
and disadvantages? I
was going to say, what are the pros and cons of each?
Let's do that at a later date, because again, to keep the technology part as simple as possible, all we need to know is if we look through there, we're going to see what's coming in through there. If it's out of focus, we'll see it out of focus. If it's dark or light, we'll see it dark or light, and we can adjust what we see from that. I will refer as we go through to either DSLR or mirrorless cameras all the way through. If I do that for the purpose of this, take them as the same thing. There are differences. We'll work out those later. But the important thing is it's a single lens reflex camera. What you see is what you get. And that's great. There is a slight difference. On the old days with film, you would have a piece of film which went in the back inside. The light would come through, and as you said, there was a physical shutter which would open up and close, like a set of Venetian blinds, if you like. If you pull the Venetian blinds open, you'll see the light come through, you pull it again, and it will close, and the light goes dark. Similar sort of idea. In the old days, that's what you had in the front of this as well. On the digital ones, you have a sensor instead of the film, but you have a shutter which opens and closes. But the sensor is electronic sensor. It's what is the camera part itself. Yours does actually still have a mechanical shutter. They still have a mechanical shutter on yours. But as I say, instead of having the light having to be bounced in front of the thing, it uses the sensor itself as the camera and projected onto a screen inside. Mm-hmm. There's an advantage which we'll come back to very, very soon on that. Okay. But effectively what we're doing is talking everything I'm talking about, yours, for now we're talking about this as well, and any DSLR camera.
Brilliant.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes. Now, you asked me what my camera was, and it's also what they call a micro four thirds camera, but I would like to talk about that in a different session, because I think that's probably going to be something that I don't think I need to know about that in order to be able to use the camera, do I?
You don't. What I'm going to say about that, the only thing I'm going to say about that at the moment, I advise you to get that, because micro four third is to do with sensor size. You know, you used to have the film in the back. We have a sensor instead, but the sensors are different sizes physically. And the micro four thirds, because they are a smaller sensor, about half the size of what they call a full frame sensor, which is equivalent to the old 35mm film. What it means is that the camera bodies are smaller, the lenses are smaller, which means they're lighter. And to me, if you are wanting to go out and take something with this, quite often the bulk of a digital camera is enough to put you off. And although I use that Canon's great. It's built like a brick, but it's too big for me sometimes. I'm a big guy. And if I'm going on holiday sometime, for instance, and I will take lots of lenses, the lenses of micro four thirds particularly are smaller. The quality is still there, but the lenses are physically smaller. And there's a lot of physics around that. We'll not touch that. But what it means for me, in reality, is a micro four thirds means I can throw a couple of different lenses in the bag, get them onto the plane in the hand luggage, take them over there nice and safe. As I'm walking around wherever I am on holiday, or if I'm going out on a shoot somewhere, I can take the gear with me, and it doesn't tire me out. And it means that when I want to take that photograph, it comes back to the idea of what are you using a camera for, to have the tech or to take the photograph. When I want to take that photograph, I've got the tech to do it, and I'm not tired, and I enjoy the experience.
So they are, yeah, so they're quite a bit smaller. Yeah. In fact, if I just hold that to my face compared to you holding the Canon, yeah, I mean, it's quite sick. I know you've got the lens on and I've only got the body, but it's significantly smaller.
If you hold the lens up in front of yours, the lens that you've got is equivalent to the lens on mine And you can see mine is huge in
I don't know
comparison.
if I can see it. It's probably easier actually next to
Just
my
in front
face
of your
because
face, yeah.
it gives a balance.
Yeah, it's considerably big and about half the weight of this one.
Yeah.
And
So
again,
so I know we're talking here about an Olympus, and we're going to go through the knobs and all the switches, and because it's quite daunting. I mean, I look at that and it's got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons just on the top alone before you get to the back, before you get to all of these buttons, before you start to see what's on the LCD screen. So although it's an Olympus, are they pretty standard across all different makes?
To a degree, yes. And again, we'll put the technology on its head. Again, I'll put an analogy to a car. You've got a car. Has it got air conditioning?
Yes.
Has it got manual heater controls as well as an automatic heater control, presumably?
I guess so.
And you'll probably have a little button for the rear demister, and you'll have a button for the front demister, and you'll have a button for this and a button for that. You don't normally use all those buttons. You'll have a select few that use their cameras the same. There'll be a select few use, and the other ones are to put the icing on the cake for those special occasions. The air conditioning when it's warm, the rear demister for when it's icy outside, which use occasionally. Cameras the same. So let's have a look at your camera. They are very much the same. I have some Olympus. I don't have that particular camera. I've never owned an EM10. I have an OMD EM1. But I also have a Panasonic Lumix, which are both Micro Four Thirds, and I have Canon. And they are different, but the same. And one of the things I've done on your camera is I've been online and I've downloaded the instruction manual for it. Simple as that. So I don't have your camera in front, but I do have the instruction manual. And if you buy a second-hand or used camera, you can almost always find the instruction manual online. So if it doesn't come with the instruction manual, get it. It's great.
Yeah, this one didn't. And yes, I did download the...
Perfect. Well, we started off. How do you switch a camera on? Before we get to f-stops and ISOs and focal lengths and things, how do I switch it on? And it's very, very simple. If you look on the top of your camera, on the left-hand side is right-hand side, the people looking down.
You turn it around and then it'll be the right.
Yeah. There's on what's now the left-hand side, there's a switch. That's it. And it's just a little lever which turns it on and off. Now, switch it on. The camera comes live. You can just see on the back that all the lights have come on the display. And if you switch it off again, that's it. Simple as that. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to get you to put your lens on, because it's important that we have a lens on, because a lot of the functions, the lenses are intelligent items as well. So by having that lens attached, the camera knows it and it does different things. Now, one of the things I will suggest is always, except for the minimum amount of time possible, have your sensor covered. It's a lot easier to use a camera if you don't have to clean dust off the sensor than it is trying to clean it off afterwards and risking it. So if you have your lens to hand in one hand, you'll see that your lens, if you just move it slightly to your left, that's it, perfect. You'll see that there is two parts of the lens. One's the front and the other part is the back. Now that's the front.
That was the opposite way around. That's the back.
The back's
the front. Yeah.
So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to take the cap off the back. So not off the camera, off the back of the lens. We'll leave the camera because what we want to do is keep the sensor as clean as possible. So it's a little quarter turn anti-clockwise. That's it. Now, if you look on the edge of the lens, you'll find that there's a little red dot. Perfect. If you look on the body of the camera around its cover, you'll find probably right at the top, there's a little red dot on there. So if you look...
I think it's under the camera.
It's under the camera. Okay.
Cover.
Well, on the other hand, just undo the camera cover, which again is an anti-clockwise quarter turn or eighth turn, and you should see there's a little red dot.
Yeah.
Okay, line the little red dots up with each other. Now, the one thing is on this, never ever force it. It should just nicely just give it a little wiggle, little drop in, and then a quarter turn. Make sure that the flange plates...
Sorry, I'm trying to do this, but
okay.
cack-handedly. There we go.
That's it. You get that nice ratio and click. Now, give it a little try to turn it back off again, and you should find that it's fixed properly on there. Try to turn it off, that's it. Now, just beside your left index finger, is a button. If you were to press that button and hold it, and then try turning the lens anti-clockwise, it should now come undone. That's it.
Yeah.
And put it back on again. You don't need to press a button when you put it on. Now, if you get the two lens caps, the ones that you've just taken off, just put the camera down for a moment. And if you get the two lens caps, the one that was on the lens and the one that was on the camera, they will join together themselves.
And so when you lose one, you lose both.
When you lose one, you lose both, but it means that they're always together in your camera bag.
Brilliant.
So put that off to one side. So it's nice and safe on that. And you can buy replacements. If you lose one, get onto one of the auction sites and buy some replacements, because they are worth their weight in gold. As I say, trying to get dust off a sensor, first of all, could be expensive if you damage a sensor. And secondly, it's just a pain you don't want to be doing because it causes problems on the shots. So we've now got to that point. If we switch the camera on again, using that control, that's it. And we'll take the lens cap off the front. Now the lens cap on the front is usually a little squeeze together that you have to do on the sides and just lift away. Perfect. And if you look on the back, I'm not going to get you to do it. I'm just going to bring it up your eye. What does it say on the back? There's a message on the back. What does it say?
It says the lens is locked. Please extend the lens.
Right. So there should be a little little lever on the side of the lens. I'm not familiar with that lens, but if you just unlock it.
I don't know how clear this is on the video, but yes, I'm just pushing that forward and turning.
Yeah. And what's happened to the display on the back?
I can now see, I can see my phone.
Wonderful.
Because that's what I'm recording on.
Just turn the camera 180 degrees and we should be able to see.
If I hold it.
Just bring it up there. That's perfect. We can see your door in the background. So we now can see what's going through that lens. So I said that you have a little TV screen in the eyepiece, but there's also a TV screen on the back. So what we're doing is actually seeing what's in that lens. So again, if you lift it up by your eye, but turn towards the door, so we can see the back. That's it. Now, if you, with your right hand, just try turning the lens body, that will turn the zoom. And we should be able to see that move. There we are. We're zooming at the door and zooming out again.
Can you see that actually on
Just about. It lets us see what is happening. That's the important thing. We know that it's happening now. So let's go back to the camera. If you want to put the camera down in front of you, that's great. There's a few more controls on there, though. And again, what we're going to do, we're going to be covering an awful lot as we go through time. It's not worth trying to do everything. There's the old adage, don't run before you can walk. And with anything, again, like the driving aspect, you learned how to change gear on a nice quiet road where you weren't going to hit lots of traffic around. We're going to do the nice, gentle parts. We're going to get it today so that when we finish this session, we'll be able to go out and take some reasonably good photographs, believe it or not, straight off. It's simple as that. To do that, we need to have a look what else is on the camera. So if you look on the right-hand side, there are 3 circular parts. We'll turn this around. That's it. Now there's a big circular part, big silver one. Just move it slightly to your left, if you would. It will come back into view. Just move the whole camera slightly to the left. A bit more. That's perfect.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Right. If you look, there's absolutely spot on. There's a silver knob, which is closest to what I call the pentaprism. I still call that the pentaprism area. It's where the TV monitor is. That's the thing, the little dome on the top.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a big silver knob, and that's got all sorts around it. And you will find things such as an A.
Shall I tell you what's actually on here? Because you don't have it in front of you.
I don't.
So I have, at the minute, it's set on I, auto.
Yeah.
It has a P. If I turn it just slightly round to P, A, S, M, what looks like a video camera.
Yeah.
And then what looks like grids, almost off, one of those apps you can get that puts all your photographs into little grids, like what do they call them? Like a
composite. It'll do.
Yeah, I can't remember the word of it.
Doesn't matter.
Compilation, like a compilation thing.
Then we should have SCN.
SCN and art.
Right. So that's them. And I know this now because I've managed to find the page in the instruction book. It's great. This is on page 22 if you have an EM10 Mark II. So what we're going to be doing is, when you've got your mobile phone, let's go back to the mobile phone. You've been taking your photos on a mobile phone. And I asked you why we want to go to a digital camera. You told me about the fact that it's going to encourage you to go out. As a professional photographer, I use a DSLR or a mirrorless camera because it gives me consistency and it gives me control. I like the idea that I have the ability to take the camera outside its best options. Now, a camera, whether it's on a mobile phone, whether it's a digital SLR, a mirrorless, if it's got any sort of automation in it, it's going to be doing a lot of calculations, a lot of computations. And I'm going to use some terminology now, which we're going to return to later. So don't worry about the terminology. But we have things like the sensitivity of the sensor, which is measured as an ISO number. We have the aperture, the iris, which is opens and closes on a lens. That's the f-stop. That's adjustable. We have the shutter speed, how long the shutter is open to allow light through, and that's measured in parts of a second. We also have the white balance because we have color temperatures, all these terms which we don't need to know for now. But your phone and a digital SLR camera or mirrorless camera will take those in. It'll read what it sees through the lens, and it'll try and adjust them for the best it can. But what that gives you is a bland center point. There's no creativity in there. There's no ability to put something of yourself into it. They are very, very good. And that's why the amount of photographs now taken, I think 2017, 16, 17 was the first year where in that 1 year, more photographs were taken in that year than the whole of time put together beforehand.
Wow, really?
Because people, when I was young, I'm considerably older than you, of course. When I was young, having a camera was a really big, expensive thing. And being able to get photographs processed cost a fortune. And that was black and white. I used to do color processing myself or film onto prints. And I was in a good job at the time, and it was incredibly expensive. Whereas now with social media, we can put a camera up to our face, take a photograph, have it displayed to the world as it's taken. And the camera does a huge amount to make that look really, really good. But if ever you've taken a selfie on your phone, and you've looked in the selfie and done that, there's a particular selfie look. And most people don't understand what the selfie look is, but they see it and they know it's a selfie. And you have that sort of slightly large nose and thin face, and everything's sort of twisted. It's distorted because it's using a wide angle lens very close up. So as a photographer, that's a poor photograph to me. As a social interactor, that's a great photograph because it gets you out there quickly. So we can carry on with the camera phones. We can carry on with these. I can get a selfie type look out of any of these cameras very, very easily. But what I want to be able to do is take it beyond that. So that's where the manual controls or the semi-automation comes in. But at first, to get that print out, let's use the camera. Let's use its intelligence because it's very, very good. So we're going to set that dial to either the I auto position or the P position.
Okay.
If you use the P position, which is the one I usually use for majority of stuff, that's great for outside. The I auto tends to take it a little bit more automated, and it'll do things like automatically flip the flash up in certain circumstances. So don't be worried if you've just got your DSLR or your mirrorless camera and you're just into this and think, I can't get around this. Set it to the auto position. It may be marked as auto. I think on my 70D, it doesn't even have that written on. It's just a green thing. But I also have a P position.
What is P? Is that programmed
mode. And again, we'll touch on that later. It's a little. Each of these are a little bit less automation. The I auto is totally automated. The P is programmed and it does lots of things. The A is an aperture priority. It gives you the priority so that you can set the aperture, but the camera will do the other things. And there's reasons for that, which we'll touch later. You have an S for speed, or on some cameras, it could be a T for time. Because if I look on my Canon, for instance, it's marked as TV, time value, because it's how long the lens is open. Then you have an M, which is fully manual, where you set the sensitivity of the the sensor, you set the aperture, you set the shutter speed. And there's reasons for that, but we'll cover those later. But for the moment, stick yourself onto either P or I auto.
Okay, I'm on P. I've put it onto P.
Excellent. We also have on the top of that camera a few other things. There's a knob, which is at the back, which is closest to where I can see it. It's furthest away. That's it. Now, what that will do, and we're not going to worry about that too much at the moment, that changes things. And these knobs will do various functions depending on what you've got on that main knob, that P, I auto, whatever. If you have it in aperture priority, for instance, that will change the lens aperture, but it won't do the other things. If you set it onto the speed, the S, it will change the shutter speed instead of the aperture. At the moment, we're pretty much going to leave that on the P and on the I auto. We're going to pretty much leave that alone at the moment. Okay. But it's a very important knob for the future. The other one is in front of that, which is a button, which is your shutter release. Really important. That's the thing that takes the picture. Although actually it's not. You take the picture. It's the thing that allows the camera to capture the image. And it is multifunction, what it does. It doesn't just open the shutter. When you start to depress that, it'll have, if you just put your finger onto it slightly, you'll find that it has two positions. It's got you push it half down.
That's halfway down. I just heard it click.
And then if you push it further, you've just taken a shot. If you look on the back quickly, you will find that as a shot of nothing, basically, whatever it is, whatever's in front of you.
The legs of my tripod.
The legs of your tripod. Perfect. You've just taken your first photograph on that. Fabulous. Maybe not the most artistic shot, but you've just done it. Are the legs
it's in focus.
It's in focus.
It's in
Wonderful.
Focus.
Oh, wow. There's an important thing. That's a really important thing. Let's go back to that button. We said it's got 2 points. One is a slightly softer shot, and then you have to push down harder to get the next one.
Oh, can you hear that little beep?
Yeah. Now that's an important beep. What that's doing is when you push that down, when you take a shot, first of all, don't just press and shoot. Put the camera to your eye or put it so you can see the back. I'm traditional. I like to have a camera against my eye. I like to do that. Again, it's this part of holding it. And it means I can hold the camera close in. And there's reasons for that. But if you put it against your eye and press half down on there, you're going to get that beep. But what it's done, it'll have auto-focused on whatever you pointed at. The focus will have come in. If you change what you're looking at now to something further away and then press the button, it'll be out of focus.
But I have to keep my finger on the button.
I can let go of the button, move it to something else which is out of focus, and then half press the button, and it should snap into focus. Did it?
Yes.
And when that beep happens, it's done a lot of things. It's auto-focused the lens, which is really clever. It's also on that I auto in the P position. It said, okay, what's the color temperature? Now, we're not about color temperature. I'm on about the color of the light. And again, we'll do this deeper at a different time. But if you can imagine those wonderful summer evenings when it's just before dusk and everything has a wonderful, warm, reddy orange glow, that is a very low temperature. It's a red light. At the middle of the day, in the middle of summer, it's a very almost intense white blue color. Now, what we do with our eyes is our eyes are very clever. Our eyes are much cleverer than any camera because we can automatically adjust all these things almost instantly. So we see it as white light. The camera doesn't. It just sees it as light, and it has to adjust things around it to balance it out so we see it how we perceive it. So when you press that button, it's saying, well, what's the color temperature? It's measured as a temperature in Kelvin, degrees Kelvin. And it says, what do I think the color temperature is there to try and make a white look white rather than blue or amber? So it does that. Is it in focus? No. Let's find something to focus on, and we'll adjust the focus of the lens. Does that. Let's have a look at how bright the light is and see what we are. Do we adjust the lens aperture? And if we do, is it going to make the shutter speed too fast or too slow, which we'll come to? And it works out what's going to be the best compromise for all those things in that little split second or so And when you hear that beep, it says, I've done all my computations. I think this is going to be a pretty good photograph. And not only that, I've got it ready set up. So when you press that button the next bit, you're going to get a good picture out of it. And that's how easy a digital SLR or a mirrorless camera is. It's as simple as that. This is why I say it's not particularly difficult to take a photograph. What we're going to be doing in the future episodes on this is we're going to be breaking that down. But at the moment, if you were to pick that camera up again and you want to look at something different, something in the room which you can and point it up there, take a photograph of it, and press down that extra shot. There we are. Have a look on the back and see what you think of that. Is it in focus?
Yeah, now I don't know if I hold this under my everything's back to front, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that that's going to work. No, there's too much reflection.
We're not really worried about what your photographs at the moment. Yeah.
No, not really. It is. I can assure you, it's actually in focus. It's the most boring photo, but it is in focus.
Ah, that's a really good point you just made. You've got a really nice camera, which is capable of doing professional shots, and you said it's a boring photo. And this brings us full circle to what I said in the first place. The photographer is what it does, and it's going to tell a story. I said about the moon, the Earthrise. There are loads of photographs from black and white ones taken on effectively box cameras, no adjustments, nothing automatic, from people in the Great Depression and the late 20s, early 30s in America, where you've got expression on people's faces. The technology didn't do that. The photographer did. So, a few more things on this before I set you on your way. First of all, remember that by leaving the camera on all the time, these are battery operated, and you've got a couple of TV screens, so your battery life will minimize. So if you're not using it for a little while, switch it off. The other thing is, and I'm not going to get you to adjust this at the moment, but you wear glasses. Mm-hmm. I don't. I do for reading, but not for this. So my eyes are different to yours. And if you have a look on the back of the camera itself at the eyepiece, you'll find on the side, probably the left-hand side as you are, a tiny little thumb wheel.
I don't know if I can show this.
Yeah, it's okay. It'll be a different place. I can see it on there.
Yeah,
on the Canon, it's up on the top right. So switch your camera back on again. And if you can focus, put it up to your eye and focus on something, get it autofocus, preferably something which has got a sharp edge, something which has got writing or something like that. And press half press the button down. Is it sharp in focus in your eye?
No.
Right. In that case, you can leave go with your right hand now because it's focused, but don't keep it pointing at the same thing. And with your left hand, turn that little wheel just with your fingertip until it's in focus.
Oh, look at that. Yes.
That made it...
Yes, it has.
Now you're now in focus with your eye on the screen, and you can tell if the lens itself is going to be in focus. And that's a huge bonus. Most people don't even see it. It's not meant to be moved. It's meant to be difficult to move because you don't want to knock it. That's pretty much your camera. Simple as that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get you to put your lens back again. And on your lens, there's a lock. Some lenses have locks, some lenses don't. Most of mine don't. So just wind your lens back in again on the zoom ring.
Okay, I'm going to talk you through what I do. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so hopefully you can see my camera. So there's a little lock button on the side. I'm literally just sliding it and turning the lens to as far as it'll go. And that's brought it back in. Just stick the
lens cap on, a little squeeze.
Cap back on.
Now my OCD, I am terrible on this because I get the name lined up straight. Isn't that terrible?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm not into
really
all
bad.
that.
No,
right, okay.
I'm really OCD on these things.
And then I'm going to press the little button.
Well, I would actually leave the lens on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I tend to leave lenses on. Every time you take the lens off, now lenses are meant to be taken off. Don't worry about that. But every time you do, you're allowing dust to go in and out of there. Now again,
do you store it in your bag with the lens on? If it's just
I always have a lens on, and the reason is as well, I can pick that camera up, switch it on, and within 2 seconds I can take a shot. And again, if you're doing something, the whole point of this is not to be techie. It's so that you can take the photograph. We used to have these great big plate cameras. You remember the old things that used to have a hood that people would go underneath? And there's a
No, I'm
glass
not that
plate.
flipping old.
No, well, you've seen them in films. But you know, you used to have a big glass plate which had the photographic image on. I used to do that. Now the definition on those plates is unbelievable. Far, far better resolution than you're going to get from any digital camera, because you talked about the tiny little grains of silver oxide which go onto this on something 10 inches by 8 inches. Wonderful. So we should, for the best quality photographs, we should all be using those cameras. No. Try leaning over the balcony on a multi-story block of flats with something which weighs 20 pounds and holding it and trying to keep it steady. It's not practical. So cameras should be practical for what they are. And to get that shot, you couldn't have got that into the capsule on that Apollo 8 mission I was on about before. A Hasselblad is a lot bigger than both of our cameras, and they're about the limit. But what you have is the right thing for what you're doing. And to have a camera with its lens on, which is instantly pick up a ball, take the lens cap off, switch it on. And I mean, for me, and I have to try and remember where the switch was on this one because I don't use it very often because I usually have the bottom right. But even with that, I've just taken a photograph of the screen that quickly. You heard the click. That's how quick I can take that photograph. So I tend to leave the lens on.
Okay.
Also be very careful where you do it, where you change the lens. If it's a dusty environment, don't even consider changing that. Move somewhere else for the sake of your camera. But where does this leave us now? Well, it leaves us in a great place as far as I'm concerned. I actually think we should just about start winding this up. And the reason I'm saying that is because we've talked about cameras. We've talked about this, but we haven't done the real one thing that cameras are good for, and that's take photographs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little challenge, if that's okay.
Okay.
We now know how to switch it on. I'm going to say, ignore all the rest of the settings on that dial and just use either the I auto or the P. And unless it's indoors where you need flash, and I would avoid that over most things, I would use the P setting. And I'm going to give you a little challenge before the next one, before the next video. I want you to go out in that P setting, and I want you to take a portrait photograph of someone. And I want to know why you're taking a portrait. When you come back, you can take as many as you want, but I want you to choose one that you do. I want you to take a portrait photograph of someone. Could be somebody you know, it could be somebody you don't know, and it hasn't to do. But I need to know why you think it's a good photograph and why not. Because we're not on about the tech, we're on about the story it portrays. I want you to take something on one of your walks that you've said, which appeals to you. And there's two photographs I want from this. One is of something. So if I was to have a something for me, it may be something like a stile that you'd walk over as you're crossing a fence, a rustic wooden stile or something like that. That's one idea, but it could be anything. It could be a lawnmower in someone's garden. There's a wonderful old, the old iron lawn rollers that used to have, which were wonderfully painted with beautiful sort of green and red enamel paints. There's one of those around the corner from us, which I've photographed a number of times. Take a photograph of something which appeals to you, and also take something of a landscape for me, please, of some area of land. It could be a hill, it could be an open field, it could be trees in the distance, whatever appeals to you. All using that P setting. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back on the next one. We're going to have a look at those photographs, but we're also going to find out, because the information which the camera has set is actually hidden inside the photograph. So we're going to find out what the camera did on those. And there's an important point as you're doing it. Make a little either physical note, write it down, or make a mental note of what the light was like. Was it a bright day? Was it late in the evening? Was it early in the morning? Was it raining? Was it bright sunshine? Whatever it is, was it indoors? Was it outdoors? Make a note of what was there, because what we're going to do is we're going to find out why the camera is clever and how it works. And we're going to work backwards on that. And then we're going to take out, well, what happens if?
Okay.
Can you do that?
Yeah, I'm just going to recap because my memory isn't great. So you want me to use either the P or the I auto setting. I think for some reason I want to go with the P. I don't know why, but I'm drawn towards the P setting. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to take a portrait of somebody, outside preferably.
Could be inside or out, whatever you decide, and why.
Okay. A object, a static object, and a landscape. You want me to take a note of the conditions, whether it was light, dark, day, night, bright, dull, whatever. Do you want me to take a note, did you say, of why I chose that particular subject?
Yes. Yeah, because I think that's the most important thing for photography for me. I've seen so many amazing technical photographs which have left me cold. And sometimes you have to do that. If you're taking a photograph to describe something from a technical point of view, the photographs that you use, the picture which you can see of your photo of your camera below this is actually really indicative, because it's telling me what it is. That's all it's doing. It is a technical photograph. But there's no emotion in that. And I like the emotion. If I'm doing a portrait, I used to do a lot of, when I said I do portrait work, I've done either individual portraits or what they call high volume work, school photography. I used to do a lot with military cadets. And you've got these youngsters, the teenagers from about 12 to 19, and they're in a uniform. I used to be with the Air Force cadets, and used to be in a uniform looking smart, and mum and dad would like a photograph of that. And yes, anybody can take a photograph of somebody, but it's what it portrays, and what you're portraying that by getting the eyes to be right, and the look and the smile, or the lack of smile sometimes, and the stance and the angle that is towards there. None of this is to do with the camera. This is to do with what you set and how you actually get that person to look their best and portray the story. And the story on this one is an emotive story. It's so that mum and dad and granddad and aunt and uncle can see that and think, well, that's our little Jenny or Johnny in a uniform, and don't they look smart? And in 10 years' time, it's that memory that you portray. But also, by the look on the face and by the glint in the eye and by the stature that they have, you're portraying a confidence, you're portraying an ability, you're portraying a maturity for some of them. And it's all those, and that comes across in one photograph. So when you're doing a photograph of this, say this grass roll I was on about, you're portraying on that because it's wonderful. It's probably made in the 1950s, one of these big concrete things, but it's the fact that you've got some wonderful wrought iron work, which is beautifully made and handcrafted and made in a forge by someone, probably with a little bit of rust creeps into it, which gives it a little bit of a charm. They're the sort of stories I do. If you're doing a landscape, the lay of the land, how that land actually comes across, how it draws the eye into certain things. If there's a stream, where that stream leads you to. What's the story? Is it just a piece of water, or does it lead you to something further on in the shot, which is much more interesting? And none of that is to do with f-stops, and none of that is to do with shutter speeds directly. The camera's working that out, but it's what you see. And that's what I want to know the story for.
Okay, challenge on.
Yeah.
So the hope is to do these weekly. I would like to do them weekly. That gives me a little bit of a chance to get out and do the work in between times. And if anybody wants to join and join in the challenge and go out and get started as well, leave your comments. Absolutely. This is not meant to be a professional photography course or anything like that. It is just our story, as you've so beautifully put it, Brian. It's the story of how this technophobe managed to hopefully get to grips with a proper camera and understand it well enough to get some half decent shots. So we'll see what comes up, and I will be absolutely hand on heart. I'm kind of putting my vulnerability on the line here, because I want you to rip them apart when I do them and tell me what's wrong and what's good. But I'm very keen to make this work. So
I think the term's constructive criticism, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, there shouldn't be any other kind, should there? Really,
no,
other than constructive criticism.
But I'll tell you what, it's a sort of thing. I've done an awful lot of looking at some fantastic photographers on YouTube and all sorts of places, And it takes us back to the very beginning of this conversation, which is the fact that there's nothing really hitting this. What do you do to make the start without putting yourself off the complicated side? This is what this is where I think that we really are doing something, because it's something I didn't have that help on. I had to sort of plow through very quickly, try to catch up. And you do catch up quickly, though. I will hasten to add, you'll be taking some fantastic photos very,
Don't put any
soon.
pressure on me.
That's okay. You put the pressure on me by telling everybody I'm a professional photographer. That makes me have a level I've got to achieve. But no, seriously, it is. And there's an important point in that before we finish, is that a photograph is an emotive thing for some people. Just like a piece of art on the wall. How many times have you've seen something and you've gone, that's fantastic, and you've heard the person say, what a lot of rubbish? You're not going to please everybody all of the time. I have a shot which I'll show one of these later videos in this. One of my favorite shots is a grain store in the town in Brampton, where I'm from. And I have a photograph which is very dear to my heart. I took it late at night with 3 strobe lights, 3 flash guns, and illuminated it. And to me, it is just the most magical shot. It's almost like having a spaceship hovering in the darkness. And it's just what I envisaged when I set the shot up. It's just what I wanted it to be. It's so perfect to what was in my mind. Yet my wife looks at it and says, it's all black. I don't like it. So is it a bad photograph? No, it's a wonderful photograph for me and for other people who've seen it, but not everyone. Take it one step at a time. The other thing I will say is we're starting to put these on. If they are useful, I did say about leaving a comment below. I think you're going to be putting these onto Instagram as a platform.
Yeah, they'll be going on as IGTV stories. I can't do them as an hour long, so they'll be 15-minute max. So they'll be in sequence.
And I'm going to be putting them onto my Brian James YouTube channel. So if you want to have a look on that, we'll get these sorted out. We'll put links to each other onto there. Whichever platform it is, do us a favor, because it's difficult looking into a little piece of glass in front of you and try to talk. I've got a great advantage because the person I'm talking to is my sister. I can see her, and I think we've talked once or twice over the years.
Yeah, once, twice.
Now that we've both reached our early 20s in age. I'm sticking to that. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. But it's a very difficult thing to try and portray to other people. So if you do get something out of this, let us know in the comments below. Hit the subscribe to keep on getting these posts, because it'll let you know.
That's going to tell the story, isn't it?
It is. And also there's a little notification bell on YouTube. I don't know what there is. I'm not on
Instagram. Yeah,
an Instagram user, but I'll leave that to you because you're the clever one on that. But on this, hit the notification bell. That'll tell you when there's new videos uploaded, because it's, Bev says, it's a story. And we're going to take you step by step through. We're going to hold your hand all the way through.
Brilliant. Right, I'm off to get my homework done.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. See you all soon.
Thanks, Bev. All the best. And I'll see everybody there. All the best.